Hi everyone, my name is Will Snodgrass. I'm a certified financial planner out of Texas. And today we're covering the all too important topic of when to take Social Security benefits. There's lots of reasons, there's lots of subtle nuances as to when you should or should not take them. So we're going to cover a myriad of different things today. We're also going to be using numbers to see if it makes sense for you and for your spouse if you have one. So let's just jump right into it. Today we're going to be looking at a hypothetical couple by the name of Joe and Susan. Joe is 62 years old. Susan is 58 years old. Joe is eligible at 62 to start drawing Social Security at $2,510 per month. And this is assuming a 2% COLA, so cost of living adjustment. Susan is able to start drawing Social Security at 62 years old at the rate of $1,780 per month. Now, just so we lay everything out, assuming that they were to wait till 67 years old, Joe would be eligible for $3,263 per month, and Susan would be eligible for $2,314 per month. If they wait until they're 70 years old, Joe would be eligible for $5,577 per month, and Susan would be eligible for $3,132.80 per month. We want to just lay the landscape just so you have an understanding of who these people are. Maybe it relates to you, maybe it doesn't, but this is the hypothetical we're going to be using today. So one of the reasons we're using it here is because when we start talking about these numbers, people are always curious about the break-even point. And what the break-even point refers to is if you started drawing Social Security at 62 years old versus if you wait till 67, at what point does the total dollar amount that you've received become greater if you waited at 67 versus at 62? For most individuals, not married couples, because that does skew the numbers a little bit, especially if there's an age discrepancy, but for most individuals, if you wait till you're 67 years old, by the time you exceed the amount that you would have already started accumulating, if you started at 62, it's usually somewhere between 78 and 80 years old. So assume somewhere between 8 to 12 years. If you start thinking about, though, drawing at 70 years old versus 67, that does skew the numbers a little bit. But as you can see from the graph here, it does show if you wait a certain amount of time, how long it takes for you to have received more than if you had started earlier. Another factor that we always take into consideration is life expectancy. Here in the United States, the average life expectancy is around 79 years old. Those numbers, though, are a little skewed because those do factor in things such as infant deaths, driving or car accident related deaths, drugs, and other things of that nature. It's not really a fair comparison, or it's not really a fair number. For the most part, if people have already made it to 65, 70 years old, they've probably already surpassed a lot of those statistics. For purposes, at least for our clients, we typically run the projections out to 100 years old. Not that every client's going to live that long, but we'd rather be assuming they live a longer life than a shorter life. So back to the example that we're using, Joe and Susan. So if Joe starts drawing Social Security in the first year he's eligible, which is 62 years old, as the numbers show, that's going to equate to about $51,480 per year. Now, also assuming that Susan starts drawing Social Security the first eligible year that she can, which is also 62, that's going to equate to an additional $1,780 per month. So when we look at the numbers, at what point, if they wait till they're 67, do those numbers cross, or does the total dollar amount from when they waited at 67 become greater than the total dollar amount that they started drawing if they had started at 62 years old? The answer to that question is 88, which is perhaps a little surprising to people. Now, if we were using just individuals as opposed to married couples, or a married couple that had a different age respectively, those numbers might look different, but at least for purposes of these numbers, it is 88 years old when the dollar amount that they have received total at starting at 67 surpasses the total dollar amount they've already received if they had started at 62 years old. This is really important to note because when it comes to deciding when to take it, there's a number of factors, but we want to look at this from an actual numbers perspective to see when does this make sense. Let's add an additional layer to that. Let's also look at what if they had waited until 70 years old. Obviously, the benefits continue to increase, as this graph will show, the longer you wait. If you retire at 62 years old, start drawing Social Security at that point, it's one number. Typically, the full retirement age nowadays, depending on what year you were born, is between 66 and 67. It's becoming 67 for more and more people. So once you're able to do that, you're not only able to draw a large dollar amount from Social Security, but now you're able to draw your full Social Security benefits without it impacting your income taxes. And if you're drawing income from other sources, it's not going to be impacting the amount you're drawing from Social Security anymore. And if you're not sure how that's impacted, here's a screenshot. This is going to show you exactly how much you can draw, at least in 2025, without it necessarily being impacted by penalties or taxes As long as you're working, if you're going to be continue drawing an income, that's going to be a factor when it comes to when you start drawing Social Security. These are things we just want to bring up. Back to the example, if you wait until you're 70 years old, when does that total cumulative dollar amount surpass what you would have been drawing or what you would have already drawn had you started at 62 or 67? The answer to that question is 82. So this is actually pretty remarkable if you think about it, because by waiting just a few extra years after 67, because of the additional monthly benefits you would have been receiving as a couple, that dollar amount actually catches up to 67 and 62 much faster, and then eventually surpasses them. So the reason we bring this up is because not only do we want to look at the numbers, and we'll show you the total difference in a moment, but we also want to make people aware there are reasons to start drawing earlier. There's reasons to wait. Every person's situation is different. But it's interesting to see how, if you wait, how much you're going to have cumulatively received over the course of your lifetime versus if you started earlier. We'll get right into why you should start potentially earlier versus why you shouldn't in a moment. But the core of this situation really comes down to how long do you think you're going to live. There's other ancillary factors which we're going to consider, but that really what it comes down to is none of us know that for certain, obviously, but it is something that we all have to really take into consideration when we're evaluating these decisions. The other numbers that we want to show you, the other graph that we're going to show you, is really if a person lives, let's say it's 75 versus 85 versus 100 years old, what the total dollar amount they would have received would be, depending if they started at 62, 67, or 70 years old. If a person passes away at 70 years old, or 75 years old, excuse me, then starting at 62 would make a lot more financial sense. As you can see from the numbers, they would have drawn out a total amount much larger than had they waited at 67 or 70 years old. If they pass away at 85 years old, the numbers become much closer, with it being slightly more favored towards 70 had they waited to draw Social Security benefits. Not necessarily by a huge amount difference between 62 and 67, but again, the longer that you live, the more it might make sense to wait. And then if you live to be 100 years old, that's really where the difference becomes very apparent. We're talking almost $1 million difference between 62 years old versus 70 years old. Again, no one knows for sure how long they're going to live, but we share those numbers so that we can start to really establish a foundation, or at least have a basis for our line of thinking. So let's get right into the main reasons why a person might consider drawing Social Security at 62 versus waiting. Number one really is they need the money. Perhaps they haven't done a good enough job accumulating. Maybe they went through a personal crisis or a major family catastrophe that decimated most of what they had saved up for retirement. Whatever the situation may be, a lot of times if a person just needs the funds, that's enough reason right there to start drawing Social Security early. Another reason might be if a person is not in the best of health. Perhaps they don't personally expect to live a very long life because their health is poor. If that's the case, that's another compelling reason to start drawing it early. A third reason might be if a person has a spouse who has a much larger benefit that they are waiting to draw from, it might be reason enough for them to start drawing their benefit earlier, with the expectation that their spouse will start drawing theirs later because they perhaps had more earning years, or they had higher earning years, they had accumulated a larger monthly benefit that is owed to them if they wait to a certain age. The point being is that if it makes sense in a married situation for a couple to, let's say, draw the lower amount, or the spouse's benefit, the lower amount earlier, that can be a compelling reason to do so. A few additional reasons why a person might want to draw their Social Security benefits earlier versus later is if they don't want to draw from their retirement accounts or their other investments early, they want to perhaps give them a chance to accumulate more value before they start drawing from those. Another reason might be that they have a guaranteed income source elsewhere, whether it be a pension or an annuity, or perhaps royalties or mineral rights, or they own a business that's going to be paying them a steady stream of income, whatever the case may be. If that is the situation, we've seen in some cases people say, I might as well draw it earlier than later. So these are all things to consider when you're making those decisions. Here are some of the reasons, though, why a person or a couple might consider not drawing Social Security early. Number one, perhaps they're still working. In 2024, if you're under the full retirement age, which is 67 years old, you can make up to $22,320 before you start having your Social Security benefits penalized. In 2025, that number is going up to $23,400. So again, this mainly applies to people that are under the age of 67 years old and who are still working. These are things to consider. Number two, another reason to consider waiting is you have longevity in your family. Perhaps you have a history within your family of people living to be more advanced in years. Perhaps you're incredibly fit. You take really good care of yourself. You've always maintained a very healthy lifestyle. You have no underlying health conditions. Bottom line is, if you expect to live a very long life, it may make sense for you to wait on drawing those benefits. Number three is really the inverse, actually, of one of the reasons to consider drawing it earlier. And that is if you have a younger spouse, or if you were the higher earning spouse and you're looking to maximize your spouse's benefits, it may make sense to draw your Social Security later rather than earlier. And this particularly pertains to people who maybe have gotten remarried. That's a whole nother discussion, especially if there is a divorce that's involved, because then that changes things a bit when it comes to who can receive what and when. Bottom line, though, if a person or a couple are looking to maximize the benefits for a younger spouse, it may make sense for the older spouse to defer drawing Social Security benefits earlier. So as you can probably guess, there's lots of other nuances. There's lots of other considerations when it comes to making a big decision like this, because in reality, while you do have a certain window after you make this decision to perhaps amend things and change your mind, once you really decide to start drawing Social Security, most people don't typically reverse that course. So you do need to take your time, factor in all the different income sources you have, what kind of living expenses you're going to maintain, what kind of debts might need to be repaid, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, before you make this decision. My advice typically to most people, take a good amount of time planning for all these different considerations before you make a decision on when to draw Social Security. If you have additional questions about that, we have a lot of free resources we're actually really excited to be giving and offering to people. Number one, there's 2 different online calculators that not only stress the importance of Social Security, but also allow you to play with the numbers to see what makes sense for you and maybe what doesn't. I'll include those links in the bottom in the description for you. You can go visit those at any time. We also have a number of free resources that we'll give to anyone who DMs us and asks for them. Number one is an article that we constructed that says, should I wait to start my Social Security benefits? It really outlines a lot of what we covered today in this video. Another one, though, is really an overview of the key facts when it comes to Social Security and Medicare. They usually go hand in glove. Most people we've seen, actually, depending on their financial situation, sometimes will actually time their retirement and when to draw benefits based on when they can start drawing Medicare. So while they are separate, they do really go hand in hand with each other. If you want those resources, feel free to reach out to us. You can either reach out to us in the comments section, go to our website at Matt25Capital.com, or you can email us at info@Matt25Capital.com. We hope you found this information useful. If you have any questions or concerns, reach out to us, or comment down in the comment section below. We'll try our best to try and reach out to you. Thanks so much. Have a blessed day.